One of my favorite books is The Lost Symbol by Dan Brown. And, it's not about liking every single book of an author. I know he's very controversial in some ways. But in The Lost Symbol, I really found that it was a really powerful story dealing with archetypes. So this young 18-year-old is confronted with the question by his father, do you want a spiritual inheritance or a material inheritance? And being young and immature, he chooses the material inheritance. A few years later, he's in jail in Greece. And as he's rotting in jail, his father comes to visit, and he overhears a conversation that his father has with the jail guard. The jail guard asks his father, who's very high up in the Masons and in the Smithsonian, the jail guard asks this guy's father if he wants to pay to have his son released. And the father says, no, and then leaves. The son then, he becomes very bitter, but having overheard that conversation, he then realizes, hey, I have my own money, I can pay to be released, which he does, and then he leaves. But the situation in the jail makes him very bitter because from his point of view, his father left him. But then later in the book, you kind of get the idea that the father was trying to give the son the idea and maybe let him overhear the conversation offering money to be released, so that could put the idea in his son's head. The son misinterprets that and becomes very bitter. So he shuts himself up in a hotel room in Greece and just studies conspiracy theories. And since his father is so high up in the Masons and his family is involved, he becomes convinced that he and his father are part of this gigantic conspiracy theory. And then he actually wants to expose it all by filming these secret Masonic gatherings. So he becomes a philanthropist, works his way up through the Masons, and then goes to this meeting with a little camera. So it's really interesting. I like that book. What I do here in Ecuador is I'm an English teacher. And the way languages are taught here, especially in the public schools, they're teaching to the highest level in the class. So you might have a class of 35 students, and only 2 or 3 are interested in English and following along. When I took teacher training, they told us that we need to be teaching to the lowest level in the class and moving the class along those lines. So it's not surprising that people ostensibly study English for all of school, but then they can't speak it or they say basic things. Usually they understand how are you, but they don't understand how is she. They don't even know the verb to be. The way English is taught in a lot of the institutes here is they make promises like, oh, you can go through all the levels in a year and 2 months, but that's too fast. And what I like with the after-school program I'm with now is we're not in a rush, and we don't want any grammar concept to take them by surprise. So we might keep a beginning level for 6 months on the beginning level, but then they learn it good.